Good evening around the world. My name is Rabbi Paysach Krohn, and I am deeply grateful to Rabbi Shnei Najjar, David Weinbaum, and Chesky Kaftail for inviting me to speak at this great gathering of unity and Achdus. In 1942, the 6th Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Riyatz, wrote a letter, and he told a story that went on in the town of the Baal Shem Tov in Mezhebich. It happened in 1752. There was a Shrek L'chamagefa. Men, women, and children were very sick, and nobody could get a handle on it. And they went to the Baal Shem Tov, and he told them there are two things that they can do. One is to say Tillim, and the second is to write a Sefer Torah. And the Baal Shem Tov called in his Sefer Rab Tzvi, and Rab Tzvi had written only 2 Uriahs since the Baal Shem Tov called him in. And when he finished his second Uriah, people began to realize that people were getting healed and they were no longer being sick. And 39 years later, after the Riyatz wrote that letter and told that story, in 1981, the 7th Lubavitcher Rebbe wrote a letter. And he darshaned the Pasuk in Daniel Yud Bey's Pasuk Aleph in a magnificent way. The Pasuk tells us a frightening thing. V'hoisa eis tzara. There will come a time when there will be a tzara asher lo niyasa miyizgoi ado eisai. That never was until that time. And then the Pasuk tells us, Ube'eisahi, however, in that time, Yimoleit amcho, your nation will be saved. Kol hanimtza kosav b'sefer. Anybody whose name is written in the Sefer. And the Rebbe said that means that people should undertake to write a Sefer Torah. And here in Crown Heights, 3 wonderful young men, Shlomi Greenwald, Beryl Unick, and Zalmi Cohen got together. And they said, it's terrible what's going on in Crown Heights. We, the 3 of us, are going to pay to have a Sefer Torah written so that there should be Yeshuas and Refuas. But when people heard about it, they said, Chevra, why only in Crown Heights? Try to get other people to be involved in the Sefer Torah. And through their efforts, they took a website, and it turned out that over 300,000 people around the world, Hasidic Yidden, Litvish Yidden, Sephardic Yidden, they all participated to bring together and buy a letter for themselves and for their families in this Sefer Torah that we finished tonight. In my humble opinion, the very last word in the Sefer Torah brings out what we are doing here tonight. The last words in the Torah, Ala Einei Kol Yisrael. The Zohar HaKodesh tells us that the word Yisrael stands for Yesh, Shishim, Ribui, Oisiyos, La Torah. There are 600,000 letters in the Torah. Why Dafka 600,000? Because there were 600,000 men that left Mitzrayim. And we are all descendants, all of us here in Crown Heights, all of us, whether it's in Australia, in Chile, in Switzerland, in Canada, in England, in Eretz Yisrael, wherever you're watching, every one of us is a descendant of one of those 600,000, and so we have a letter that's ours. Every one of us has a letter that's ours. And if that's the case to me, there's 3 lessons that we can learn. The first one is that if there's one letter in a Sefer Torah, Chas v'shalom, it's missing, you lay on Shabbos and you see a letter is missing, the whole Sefer Torah is flawed. To me, that means that if there's one Yid out there, no matter where he is, but he's not fulfilling his tafkid, then all of us are flawed. Kiruv is not only for specific groups. Every one of us has to make sure that every Yid is fulfilling his tafkid, just like we need every letter. The second lesson to me is that there can be no overlap. There's so many people, a person could think, why does Eibishter need me? There's so many Yidden out there, so many great Yidden. No 2 letters can overlap. Everyone has their own tafkid. Everyone has their own purpose. And the third lesson to me In the English language, we have words that are one letter. I go, I do, I think. A book, a table, a chair. But in the Torah, there's no such thing. There's no word that's only one letter. We can't do it alone. That's the symbol of Yisrael. That's a symbol of Achdus. And that's why, in my humble opinion, the Torah begins with a Beis. Only the Eibishter Alein is Aleph. It has to begin with Beis because we need each other. Many of you know that every year, before COVID, I would take trips to places where Yiddishkeit flourished. And in 2010, I took about 80 people and we went to Italy. And we learned about the Mesilas Yesharim and the Bartanura and the Sforna and the Orach Chaim HaKadosh that was in Italy for a while. But then I took the people on the last day of the trip to the Arch of Titus in Rome. Rome is different than any city in the world. Every city in the world tries to show you how modern they are. In Rome, they try to show you how ancient they are. And there are arenas and ruins and temples and arches that are all dilapidated. But to me, it hurt me so much. Why did the Eibishter allow that Arch of Titus that's 51 feet high? The brother of Titus built it for him. Titus was the one who destroyed the second Beis Hamikdash. Why did the Eibishter allow that to be in perfect condition? And if you know anything about that arch, it shows there's a sculpture on top where Yidden are carrying out the menorah. What a bazillion. Why did Eibishter leave it? And I'll tell you what I think. In 1953, the Ponevezh Rov came and he stood beside the arch and he yelled up and he said, Titus, Titus, you thought you were going to get rid of us. But look, today there's no Roman Empire anymore. And we today are Yidden existing all over the world. Titus did not get rid of the Yidden just like he thought he would. And then I told him a story about a correspondent, an American correspondent who was a Yid but not from, who was an Amoras Deraisa. He knew nothing. And he was going up to the northern part of England, near the town of Gateshead in Newcastle. And he was reporting on Hadrian's wall. Hadrian is Hadrianus. He's the one who killed Rabbi Akiva. And there was a 75-mile wall. And he was writing about it, but he saw it's nothing today. People take off pieces as souvenirs. And somebody found out he was Jewish. And they said to him, you know, there's a Jewish neighborhood here. Would you like to see it? He said, yeah, I'm a correspondent. Sure, I would like to see it. So whoever that person was, a genius. He took him to Rabbi Leib Gurewitz, the great, to Rosh Hashiva of Gateshead. And he brought this fellow in, and the Rosh Hashiva was talking to him, and he found out that he's writing about Hadrian's wall, and he said, come with me, I want to take you someplace. And Rabbi Leib Gurewitz took this correspondent, they put a yarmulke on his head, and he took him into the Gateshead Yeshiva. Rabbi Matisyahu Solomon, the Mashgiach of Lakewood, Zolzan Gesund and Stark, he told me he remembers the day that Rabbi Leib brought in this correspondent. And this fellow, he never was in a Beis Medrash before. He sees big books, little books, on the shelves, off the shelves, yelling, screaming back and forth. He says, Rabbi, how could you think here? What's going on in this place? And Rabbi Leib said to him, I brought you here for a reason. You came here to report on Hadrian's wall. Hadrian doesn't exist anymore. Nobody cares about him. They thought that he killed Rabbi Akiva, which he did, but Rabbi Akiva lives. All these guys, they're trying to figure out what Rabbi Akiva meant. And we have hundreds of places around the world where they're still talking about Rabbi Akiva. And then I told the people, now I understand. You know why the Eibishter left the Arch of Titus? They're carrying the menorah. That's our message for Yidden, not for the Goyim. Kiner mitzvah v'Torah or. If we want to make it from that journey which started at the end of the Churban, by the Churban in Yerushalayim, and we want to make it to Mashiach, we have to carry that message, Kiner mitzvah v'Torah or. And the Tanchuma tells us, Ein Yisrael negolen ad sheyu b'aguda echad. Klal Yisrael will not be redeemed. Mashiach will not come until we are all as one. And so today when I was speaking to Beryl Unick, we decided that every person here tonight, it's not just enough to see the videos and to hear the speeches. You got to make a commitment to Achdus. You know what that means? That if you are zoicha to make a shidduch for your child, get involved to make a shidduch for another child, for somebody else's child. You are zoicha to make a good business deal, get involved in helping somebody else who doesn't have the finances to make a good business deal. Your child is, Baruch Hashem, learning well. Make sure that some other child gets a tutor, gets a yeshiva where they can learn well with him. Tonight, we have to make that commitment. You know, before the Eibishter realized, when the Eibishter realized that Moshe Rabbeinu was going to leave this world, he said, "Va'ata kisvu lachem as hashira hazois." Write the shira. Why is the shira, the Torah, called a shira? Because you come here tonight, all the great singers, they all harmonize perfectly. They harmonize in sync. That's what the Torah is. If you have and you observe the Torah, then you can have an harmonious relationship with your family, with your community, and with the Rabbeinu Shalom. I just want to end with this thing. The Bnei Yissaschar says the most remarkable thing. He says the letters on the dreidel, Nun, Gimel, Shin, and Hey, that's the history of the world. Nun is the nefesh that we lost because we can't bring karbonis. Guf was the galus. Haman wanted to kill the guf. Shin is the seichel, the Yevonim, they wanted to get rid of our seichel. They wanted to change our culture. Hey is Hakol, we have Nebuch, all the galus in today. And he says, Nun Gimel Hey Shin, that's Oisye's Goishna. It's Begamatria 358, and he says, no dreidel can ever spin forever. It's going to fall. And you know something? When it falls, 358 falls, but another 358 rises. What is that? Mashiach is Begamatria 358. And that's what he says. That's what the Pasuk tells us. That Yankov es Yehuda Shalach Lefonav al Yosef Lahorz Lefonav Goishna. Goishna is that idea of the dreidel. That with 358, that's what's going to stand. And that's how Mashiach is going to come. When we have those gullus and fall. And only Rabbi Ovadia Yosef could have thought of this. You know what he says Mashiach stands for? Madlikin Shemoinas Yemei Chanukah. We're coming towards Hanukkah. We want to see Mashiach. We all want Mashiach. How are we going to have it? With Achdus. Tonight, we quoted the 6th Lubavitcher Rebbe, the 7th Lubavitcher Rebbe, the Baal Shem Tov, the Ponevezh Yerov, Rab Leib Gurwitz, Rab Matas Yo, Bnei Yissaschar, Rab Ovadia Yosef, Chassidish Gedolim, Litvish Gedolim, Sfardish Gedolim. You know who bought the letters in this Sefer Torah among the 300,000? Chassidish Yidden, Litvish Yidden, and Sfardish Yidden. That's what it's all about. We're all together. We're all brothers and sisters. Let us hope that this night of Achdus, when we learn to care for each other, will help us see the ultimate or, which is the or of Mashiach.